Joining me now, Congressman Greg Meeks of New York. He is the ranking Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, we appreciate you joining us tonight. There's no better guest to have on this than you. The House was able to narrowly pass an annual defense bill that seemed to me to have more to do with culture wars than battle readiness. House Republicans gutting Biden-era abortion protections for military members and diversity measures from the Pentagon. Added to that, during Thursday's floor debate, we all heard what sounded to me like an intentionally nasty dog whistle coming from a GOP congressman from Arizona. For my audience, I have to replay that moment. The reaction by former CBC Chair Joyce Beatty of Ohio, and of course, your reaction as a witness, you on the floor. I should warn our viewers that the language may be disturbing to some. Roll that exchange, please.
My amendment has nothing to do with whether or not colored people or black people or anybody can serve, okay? It has nothing to do with color
Mr.
of your
Speaker,
skin.
I'd like to be recognized to have the words colored people stricken from the record. I find it offensive and very inappropriate.
Can I amend my comments to people of color?
The gentleman wishes to amend his comments. It's consent.
Mr. Speaker, to have the word stricken. I didn't ask for an amendment.
Now, I should note that Arizona Congressman Eli Crane has since issued a statement saying he, quote, misspoke. Still, what are your thoughts on the whole matter, Congressman Meeks?
But Rev, you're right. I was on the floor, and I couldn't believe my ears when I heard him make that statement. It just seemed to me, he seemed so comfortable just saying that. It did not seem on the floor that it was a misspoken word. It was a word that was intentionally said. And, you know, through this whole debate, when in fact the Republicans are trying to end diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that's part of what the debate had been about all during the debate on the floor. And then for him to utter those words where it has been clear that they don't believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, it seems to me that it was something that he felt comfortable saying at that time, and it was offensive. You should look, and then, you know, I looked at the faces of others that were on the floor, and we all were shocked, dismayed, and insulted by what he had stated on the floor.
Now, switching to the other chamber's GOP caucus, as I heard the comments from Congressman Crane, I thought of Alabama Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville. The fire he's been under over his comments, refusing to concede white nationalists were in fact racist, a stance he kept up until just 4 days ago. Yet he currently holding up dozens of Pentagon appointments as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee over, again, its abortion travel policy, over the objections of the president, military leaders, and even some Senate Republicans. I feel like in addition to using racism to retain far-right voters, which we've covered, Republicans' culture wars is endangering even our military as one area they wouldn't dare touch once upon a time. Congressman, your reaction?
Yeah, so look, it's absolutely correct. Number one, you know, this is reminiscent of some statements that the former president made, you know, a number of times, claiming he did not know who the head of the Ku Klux Klan was, claiming that, you know, again, calling white nationalists and calling for white nationalism, the same kind of hate speech, in my estimation, that we're hearing now from this same individual from Mississippi, who took him days to talk about that white nationalists are individuals who are basically segregationists in that regards. And for him to be putting our national defense at stake, and that's what he's doing, holding up all of these appointments. Military personnel, ambassadors are being held up. For this individual, one individual to hold up these appointments is to me, is anti-American. And every member of Congress, every member of the Senate, every member of the House, every American should be demanding that he stop his holding of America, holding America and our national defense hostage for some of his own personal, and I believe in the back, ideology that is similar to many of what the white nationalists believe in.
On Thursday, barely 2 weeks after the Supreme Court's affirmative action decision, 13 Republican state attorney generals sent a letter to our nation's top 100 companies claiming any race-based policy was illegal. As made clear by the High Court's decision, some of the nation's biggest companies, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Uber, they're singled out. That comes days after Missouri's Attorney General demanded the dismantling of race-based scholarships in that state. He was one of the signers of this week's letter. My fear was always that this fight wouldn't end with college enrollment. It didn't take long, it appears, that what I feared and expressed has come to place or come into being. Your response, Congressman?
There's no question that we're going to have some further fights on the road, because clearly, and I've said this before, that how gravely disappointed I was in the SCOTUS decision to effectively end affirmative action in college admissions and decisions. But I say that the SCOTUS decision itself does not legally impact Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which is what governs employment discrimination or discrimination in the workplace. Now, I know that this agenda that the Republicans have had, just starts with what they're trying to do and what the courts have just ruled in reference to college admissions decisions. We've got to make sure that we are aware and start fighting back. This is why the ballot box is important. Those 4 years that we had of this other guy who was president and appointed those individuals to the bench, they did so knowing that it would have a devastating effect on this country for decades. So we've got to make sure that we don't just sit back and make noise. We got to organize like never before and be prepared so that we can win elections again, especially we've got to hold on to the presidency so that we can make sure that we start. We look at the number of judges, for example, that President Biden has appointed now on the lower courts. That is extremely important and should have some effect on the decisions that are made in the higher courts going forward. But clearly, we know that, and I believe that the heads and the CEOs of these major companies understand that diversity is good for business. Yeah. And they should not play on because this is good for business to have diversity.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It was former President Trump that put 3 of those judges on the Supreme Court that voted this. People that didn't vote in 2016 helped put those 3 judges on the bench. Thank you, Congressman Greg Meeks.